This is Keys to the Shop, episode 438. How to be the CE owner with Erin Young. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DiFirio. I'm your host for the show, and I'm always happy to have you along for these episodes. If you would subscribe to the show, that would do a world of good for you and for me, actually. You know, you get to be updated with new content as it comes out, and also the show gets helped through subscriber rates, which means more people can find Keys to the Shop. They can find these episodes and benefit from them. And thank you very much, everybody, for your consideration and also for sharing these episodes. That means the world to me. And it's like you're giving the gift of coffee love to somebody, and that's really cool. So thank you. Now, Keys to the Shop, on top of doing this podcast, also does consulting and coaching for your business and for you as the owner and operator, someone who is in charge of this wonderful entity, this coffee shop, where it can get complex pretty quickly. You've got people, you've got coffee, you've got the space and the customers. And as you go on in working as a owner, as a operator, it definitely helps to have a trusted advisor and some outside perspective to really give you clarity and equip you for success. And that's what Keys to the Shop Consulting does. Reach out to me, Chris at keystotheshop.com. That's CHRIS at keystotheshop.com. We'll set up a free discovery call and talk all about how Keys to the Shop Consulting might be able to help you. Again, the email for Keys to the Shop Consulting, Chris at keystotheshop.com. And if you're an owner, also, I would advise, we have a key holder coaching group that has been started. This is a new offering from Keys to the Shop, where 6 or 7 wonderful coffee shop owners gather together in mastermind groups to help each other succeed in coffee. These are hosted by myself, and we have these 2-hour discussions 12 times over 6 months, and we get to focus on individual business issues and questions, and people walk away edified, encouraged, equipped for success. And just, being an owner can be lonely, and doing this job is pretty tough. And so these groups, the key holder coaching groups, are designed to help you in just that way. So if you're interested in being considered and want to apply early for the next round of groups in 2024, go ahead and email Chris at keystotheshop.com, and I'll put you on that list. That's going to open up around March of 2024. So it's actually not that far away. So I'm really looking forward to it. Now, one thing that you have to realize about coffee shops is that customers depend on us for innovation, to innovate in the direction of service and experience, especially. That's what they pay the big bucks for specialty coffee for, And when technology like the ground control brewer comes along, you really have to take notice, because it actually delivers a next level quality experience and just a service experience for the customer. It makes you more efficient, because besides being a next level batch brewer, the ground control brewer also creates batch iced lattes, batch cold brew in under 8 minutes. You can use this equipment for a range of different extraction possibilities. And right now, the new, smaller, more powerful ground control brewer is 45% less than the original Cyclops brewer when you use early bird special pricing. And so I would reach out to groundcontrol.coffee to learn more about this deal and about this equipment. The new brewer has 30% higher volume for batch espresso and cold brew concentrate, and also is cloud connected to a smart dispenser that tracks all your brewing data. So this machine is fantastic. And if you are looking for quality, versatility, and the next level experience for coffee, consider the Ground Control. Go to groundcontrol.coffee to learn more. And now, speaking of experience, your customers are diverse, and they have lots of different tastes and, quirks about what they want. And one of the biggest categories that's been growing over the years is plant-based beverages. And one of the best products that you can use for plant-based beverages is the Barista Series. This is designed for baristas and tested by baristas before it makes it to the market. So the Barista Series plant-based beverages, they stand up to the heat from the steaming process. They create awesome texture for latte art. They are also keeping the balance of every beverage focused on the coffee, which is really important. So check them out at pacificfoodservice.com to learn more and get samples. Try it for yourself. In fact, have your whole team try it. I think you're going to be impressed. If you want the best plant-based beverages for your customers, I think you should consider the Barista Series from Pacific. Well, everybody, today we're going to be talking about one entrepreneur's journey from not only starting a coffee shop, but also now writing a book about that journey. The book is called The CE Owner, and the author's name is Erin Young. Erin is a passionate small business owner. Erin is the founder and owner of Red Buffalo Cafe. She's a passionate small business owner and advocate who has actively worked to build kind, conscious, and responsible communities. Erin has experienced the challenges and opportunities faced when considering improvements to business planning, recruitment and hiring, and other features that contribute to long-term business success. And in addition to being a business owner, Erin is an active community leader who has served on several local nonprofit boards and as a local elected official for various jurisdictions. Now she has written a book called The CE Owner, which is a chronicle of Red Buffalo Cafe from the beginning till today. And it functions kind of like a checklist for starting and succeeding in a small business. The CE Owner book covers the process of building and planning your business profile from the very beginning and moves along to suggestions in ethical business management and kind of culminates with how to create a legacy beyond you as the business owner. So this is a wonderful book. And this is what we are going to be talking about today with Erin. Think of this as one part of an exploration of Erin's journey in beginning this coffee shop, and then also how this book was conceived, what's in it, and what's the best advice Erin has, both from her career and especially from the book, to help you with both the people, the processes, the metrics, and just the overall steps to success of running a coffee shop. I'm really glad to have Erin on the show, so let's get right to it. Here now is my conversation with the author of the book, The CE Owner, Erin Young. Erin, welcome to Keys to the Shop. How are you today?
Oh, I'm so good today, Chris. Thank you so much.
Yeah, pleasure to have you here and to explore a little bit about how, you've got this new book that you've published that's been really well received. It's called The CE Owner. So nice combination of two words there. I like that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. But of course, the content is based on your experiences as an owner of a coffee business. And so it feels very appropriate to kind of jump into the beginning and say, well, how did you ever find yourself becoming the owner of a coffee business?
I started coffee like many people do as a high school job, or some find it as a college job. But for me, it was a high school job. And I loved it. I loved what it did for my community. I come from a small town in Colorado, and it was just where people met. Even as young as middle school students, you knew that this is where they met their friends. And then all the way up to your aging population, this is where they met their friends. It's where business deals happened. And I got to witness that at such a young age. And then there came a point as I got older, I was in college, and to be honest, probably a little cocky, a little reckless, thinking, my town doesn't have one. I can do this, and I can do it better. All the fears of, well, what would happen if I fail? Like, I didn't have a family to support. I didn't have a retirement fund I was even thinking of at the time. And it was just I can do it. And I just jumped right in. And of course, learned the hard way so many things, but perseverance and seeing it grow for my community to be that thing that I started in coffee as a teenager serving.
Okay, so the hubris of youth is like the beginning, and you said, I can do it better because you see it and you're passionate. But did you take over an existing coffee shop? Did you start your own from scratch? How did that begin for you?
I started from scratch. So I was working as a barista in a neighboring town to the one I grew up in. And I was going to college, and I came back, and I went back to that neighboring coffee shop. But in my own town, there was a plant nursery, a beautiful nursery right on the riverside, huge window ceiling, So all the plants could get all that wonderful greenhouse effect in there. And I'd known the owner, and she said, you know what, I have this little like 500 square feet. I'd always thought it'd be fun to have coffee in here. And I was like, I could do it. So I started it from scratch there. I didn't take out a business loan. I had graduated college early, and I still had a little bit. I'm so fortunate. I really want to highlight how fortunate I was to still have a little bit of my college funds left, because I had gotten grants in college, I'd gotten scholarships in college, and so I still had a little bit left. So I paid off the loan on my car.
Oh, wow.
This was before I started the shop. But then I was like, well, I could take out a loan against the value of my car. And I had also timed up well from that era when Starbucks was selling all of their old La Marzocos, and they were moving to those giant, fully automatic machines. And so they were selling off fleets of La Marzocco Lineas. And I was so fortunate. I got my hands on a 4-group, huge machine for $500 in good shape. So through the process of knowing various vendors, timing it with a $500 really nice espresso machine and very cheap rent because I was sharing only 500 square feet, I was able to start it on my own. And no business loan, just the loan out on the value of my car, and having a good partnership and an idea, and starting small and building from there.
So you started it as Red Buffalo.
Technically, in my LLC name will say a cup in the corner, because I started as a coffee cup in the corner of a nursery. But within 9 months, I outgrew that space. This was a beautiful nursery on the riverside, like I said, but it had 6 parking spaces. And there's some interesting complications that go with shared space when you have whose business is open at different hours, who's managing what sort of scenarios. I'd have people come into my business at 6:30 in the morning thinking that I could help them with nursery things. So within a year and a half, I had closed that location, and I had moved, or was in the process of moving, into a bigger location that was, I guess if you were not from the mountains, you would call it a strip mall. But if you're in the mountains, you would just call it mixed use development, where there's condos up top and beautiful stores below, again, right on the riverside. And so within that year and a half, I realized that cup in the corner was great, but it was too small for what it was becoming. And so at that point, it was a great opportunity to rebrand. And you will see when you drive down into the valley of my town, 2 huge mountains. One is called Red Mountain, and the other one is called Buffalo Mountain. And thus, Red Buffalo Cafe came into existence.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so in this growth that you experienced, where you had assumed that my town needs something like this, you're proven right because of the response. You touched a nerve. People did want something like this. And so when you outgrew that space and you went into that mixed use development space, what were the changes that you made, lessons that you learned doing this from scratch in the corner? What were the changes you made in the brick and mortar that you opened in that space?
I definitely learned to read contracts better. So lessons along the way, right? You think I'm just dealing with friends. This is a small mountain town. Well, legalese is still very important. So in the process of leaving one location and starting a new one, discussing lease agreements and tenant improvement finishes, learning the legalese was something I had to adapt to. But things I started to be able to offer in a bigger space was community seating, community events. I expanded my menu. Now, my space doesn't allow for a kitchen. It doesn't have a hood. And that was even when I was cup in the corner. Everything still needed to be brought in from a third-party vendor and easily manipulated with toasters or paninis or microwaves. So I still had good relationships. And we were able to expand some of those food options based on those relationships. Now, I have a mantra in my business that I have an 80 by 80 rule. 80% of my products come from companies within an 80-mile radius of where I am.
Oh.
I can't say products because coffee will never be 80 miles from where I live, but from companies. I want to keep it local, reduce my environmental footprint. So it did limit who I could go out to try to get certain food products in from. And so everything had to be local.
Okay, so you had local food options, you were getting better at reading legalese, and you had more customers as a result of having more capacity to serve customers. But one thing that you would probably also need to have done is to take on more help, more staff.
Yes. Absolutely. I had to hire.
Yeah. Now, that is a whole world of education in and of itself, managing yourself, staying motivated yourself, and all of this. Going from that corner to the brick and mortar, I mean, did you have any employees at the corner cafe? And then what was the biggest difference going to the brick and mortar in terms of leading people as you grew?
That's probably been my biggest learning experience, to be honest. And it's still a learning experience. It'll always be evolving. I say in the book, and I say it a lot of times when I talk to outside parties, is that human resources need to stay human. It's the hardest part of the job, though. But we're not dealing with forms. We're not dealing with paperwork. We're dealing with individuals. But when I was at the little corner cafe, actually, my first employee was my mother. She had worked in coffee at one point too, and she is a ski instructor. And so she helped me out 2 days a week. After about 6 months, the first 6 months I was there, as many business owners are, 7 days a week. I used to joke that I just should have brought a cot into the business. But she helped me out 2 days a week, and I paid her like an employee because I didn't want this just to be mom helping me out. I'm very proud against asking for help. And as I moved into my newer brick and mortar, the first couple people I hired were friends from high school. And again, that's great when you're a small team. But as you grow, you have to be able to learn, where's this a friend from high school and when do I need to be a boss? How can I make corrections to someone that I have a longer history with outside of this shop, who I might hang out with outside of work? But it was great. It was small. We'd have 4 to 5 employees total. And I remember those early days when we'd have like a $300 day. And it was amazing for us. And we would go across the street to the dive bar afterwards, and we'd all share a glass of cheap wine because we had a record day. And now we're bigger than that. There's 12 employees, and having those sort of impromptu moments is a little less frequent. That being said, we just went out this week to celebrate 2 of our staff birthdays. We went bowling, right? All those things that we learned from budding entrepreneurship of how to just make a family of your people, I still carry with me, but I've learned the boundaries along the way.
That's interesting, because the word family, at times, depending on who's using it, can be used as a way to sort of cajole people into submission or silence, like don't come against the family kind of thing. The boundaries that you set, I imagine, help in making it not more of a toxic way of using the word family. You're all familiar with one another and you're familial in that way. What kind of boundaries are you referring to so that it's not like this stodgy environment, but it's still a connected environment?
I mentioned this in the book about how family is good to an extent. Mm-hmm. You don't want this to become a bickering siblinghood, nor do you want this to become nepotistic, where you don't question the authority. Everything has to be rooted in respect and open communication. And that communication has to be framed in the sense of, I still respect this person. I came into this business, if from their end or from my end, that this is someone I respect and want to work with. And so all communication has to remind yourself of that base rule, that we're humans, and that means the emotions that we're going to come from personally and solicit when we deliver are human emotions. So personally, as the owner, I have had to draw those lines of, I really enjoy this person's company. When I'm working with them, we get along great. We're getting to know each other. But I cannot be the best friend outside of this work. I had that happen, and it didn't go well. It didn't end well. Feelings get hurt. And when people move on, it's not always an amicable, happy passing. And those were lessons learned. Now, I don't have those sort of negative passings. If someone moves on for life and experience and excitement outside of the cafe, I can still think fondly of them. And many, many times, I call it my rockstar barista list. They end up staying on as rock stars. We can call on them when they come into town to visit family, or when someone else is sick, or someone wants like an extra vacation, and we can bring in our rockstar baristas who aren't with me regularly anymore, but still love the cafe. But all of that had to come because I had to separate myself from friendship and leader.
And so that separation, it helps you focus on other things regarding how you interact with your staff, not so much as a friend, but as a boss. What is it that you're providing for your staff that is transcendent of a friendship?
Mentorship. I provide mentorship. I provide leadership. I've looked at my role because even with staff who I hire who've been older than me, most of them are still younger than me. And I look at it as an opportunity to think, I've had these life lived experiences. Let me be a sounding board for theirs. Let me be that lead by example person, that I will be calm in a face of chaos. I will also be human in a face of chaos. And that means sometimes my own life can have hardships in it, and I might not come to work at my 100%, but I'm going to give them the 100% that I have available to me. And if I model that, then they can model that. If I model professional growth and professional development, and if I model respect, that's something they can do. But I also do one-on-one leadership training with people. In my quarterly reviews of staff, we're asking not just how they're doing as a barista, not just how they're doing at work, how are they doing outside of life? What are their goals? Are they going back to school? Do they want to start their own business? Or do they just they want to go hike the Appalachian Trail? And I meet with them and I discuss, how do we want to get there? What are these big goals? And let me just listen if I need to listen. Let me support where I need to support. Let me advise where I need to advise. And I've learned so much from them too. I'm not saying that every time I just go in as this sage, that, I'm a yogi, that they're just so excited to get all the world's knowledge and wisdom. No, it's my knowledge and wisdom comes from errors and making mistakes, but also having my own feet grounded in where I live and where I am. So that way, if they need to be a little fluid in their own motions, that's allowed too.
And these are things that they are confiding in you about. In a matter of course, their one-on-ones are set up as one-on-ones with you to help them in their professional world. I imagine it kind of evolves into, you end up knowing some things about them. And, the advice that you give people, I'm curious about. Many people who are listening to this would say, I would never venture to tell anybody anything about their life or what they should or shouldn't do if it's not related to coffee specifically or their job, liability reasons or crossing a line and that kind of thing. How do you manage that particular aspect of it?
When things are clearly very personal and they should see a different professional, whether that's problems in a marriage, legal problems, legitimate health problems, and mental health problems as well, I absolutely will phrase it that I am not the expert, but I can be here to support. Colorado is an at-will state legally for employment purposes. So that does provide a different platform that we operate from. I'll often say, you have your friends outside of work, lean on them. But sometimes you are with your work people more than you're with the people outside of your work. And so you don't want people to feel lost. You don't want people to feel to come in and can't be themselves. The concept of people not having a passion outside of work is gone. That 9 to 5, 60 years in a career, that's gone. That the pandemic really hit that nail on the head in terms of we're not looking at one career anymore. And if we don't lean into other people's passions, if we don't lean into our staff's interests outside of work, they will leave to pursue them. Mm. But if you support them in those dreams and in those goals, they're more likely to stay with you while they develop them and figure them out. And so you might not have this person for 60 years. You might not even have them for 5 years, but you might have them for 2 years versus 9 months because you supported what that outside dream was.
So let's go into, because I feel like we're talking about some of the things, that, like you said, that are in the book. And so you run a coffee shop. Do you roast coffee as well?
I do not roast coffee. I have an amazing roaster, been with them since I opened. They are tremendous, but I'm a firm believer if I can't do something to my absolute best, I'm going to find the person who can, and I'm going to carry their product.
Awesome. 80 by 80, right?
Yes, 80 by 80. My roaster is 80 miles away from me, but they are tremendous. They come up and do cupping with my staff. We work on seasonal roasts. They give me roaster's choice. We play with it because I'm at 9,000 feet.
Oh, wow.
Coffee brews differently up here. And so they will come up and we will work on our water to coffee ratios to make sure that it's still extracting at its optimum tastes profiles that we need at our elevation with cooler water.
That sounds good. Cool. So, a lot of people don't write a book, and maybe a lot of people should write a book. You were of the mindset that this is something you wanted to do. Talk to me a little bit about why you decided to write a book. What was the catalyst for that? How did you go about deciding what should be in that?
The catalyst was a lot of friends had already come to me saying, Erin, you should write a book, because I had given guest presentations on various parts that you'll see in this book, whether that's on leadership development or how to start when you're small and how to develop a profit from nothing. And I had spoken at chambers of commerce, economic development, small business development center, the Small Business Administration. So I had been asked to speak to these groups when they're doing classes, the local college. And I'd also written a lot of just coffee lingo blogs on our website. And again, it kind of comes with that hubris I had when I opened the shop was someone said, Erin, you have all this anyway. People are always asking for your advice. Why not just write a book? And then you can just be like, hey, instead of me walking through every single person, read this book and come back with questions. So it's efficiency and it's the hubris of, I guess I can write a book.
Okay. A lot of this feedback is confirmation that you should write a book, and you just decide, okay, we're going to start from everything that I know of how to do this and put it in there for this audience of obviously people who own coffee shops. Putting the book together, there's so many sections of the book, but I would be curious to hear from you what your main desire is for people to take away from the book based on the content. What are some of the best pieces of content in the book that you think an entrepreneur in today's environment of coffee shop ownership at least should really meditate on this stuff?
Yes, I break the book up into 4 main sections. The first part is really, why are you in business? Why are you starting a business? And to that end, I say, if there's a quote you want, and that would be, small businesses are microcosms of their community. They are the people who work there. They're your older people. They're your younger people. They're your families. They're your tourists. So how is your business reflecting and serving your community? The second part is really building that plan, having a plan. I know so many business owners who've started and didn't have a plan and still don't have a plan. I've talked to their employees and they said, I really wish we had some sort of strategic plan, or where are we going? So that's part 2 of the book, because I really want people to think that you have to write some of those ideas down, and you have to continually read and improve and find ways to write out your standard operating procedures, write skills-based competencies for your business. All of those will help you in the long run. My third part of the book is really about that human resources as human piece. We do talk about how your team is family, but also to stay away from certain pitfalls, how to do individual benefits that fit your budget, because you could be a small business and still have amazing benefits, even if it can't be health insurance. And well, in Colorado, you have to provide a retirement fund. That's a Colorado law, but you can still do so much. And then my fourth and final part of the book is how to build a legacy business. And what I say a lot, and I say it in the book, is people shop with their values. So be a business people want to do business with. To that end, you're not going to hit everybody's values. There are people who don't share your values, and that's okay. One of the big things I have in my book is I talk about a cause statement, and that's different than a mission statement, because a mission statement says what I'm going to do, right? I am going to provide exceptional service and quality products. But what my cause statement says is I'm going to inspire an inclusive and a welcoming community by connecting people to each other over a shared experience. That talks about the fact that it doesn't matter who you come into as my shop, you're going to get a welcoming community. And that's what I train my staff in, that we have heroic customer service that says when you come in, you're going to get this sense of community. We did a marketing campaign once and it was authentically Silverthorne. And we started that because my town didn't have a Starbucks. And then one moved in. And I was like, all right, how do I market and combat Starbucks? Because I never want to badmouth Starbucks. And I'll say it in the book. What Howard Schultz did in expanding espresso-based drinks to middle America is tremendous. I probably never would have been able to have a coffee shop in Colorado to the extent that I have had Starbucks not shown that lattes were something that the average Joe wanted to consume. So huge props where it's due, but we will never badmouth in our marketing. Our marketing is always, how can we uplift? And so we were authentically Silverthorne, because let's face it, a Starbucks is a Starbucks is a Starbucks. But when you come into my business, you're like, this feels like this town.
Yes. No, that's great. And that really is hitting on that community piece that you began with, which is reflecting your community. And obviously the people that work there are from there. And when you think about success in a coffee shop, I want to get into this idea of profitability and systems compared to the cause statements and the community. So in some ways, I think we can put these into 2 buckets, or at least we tend to in our mind. There's the really soft, warm, fuzzy, goosebumpy type of stuff that we love coffee for. right? But then there's the fact that we do have to run a business and we do have to make sometimes hard decisions and track what's going on in the shop in a way that creates consistency. So if you had to give advice in terms of what the book talks about with operations and profitability, what kind of things are people needing to focus on in order to really have both of those buckets operating at full capacity?
That's a great question because so many people do love this fuzzy idea of a coffee shop, right? How many times have you heard someone say, I just want to own a coffee shop? You're like, well, this isn't Cheers.
Right. Yeah.
Starting out at the very beginning and writing your business plan has to have a estimated profit and loss. You don't even know what your profit's going to be, but you have to do that background knowledge. What am I paying at Starbucks for a latte? What am I paying at the local other coffee shop for a latte? It kind of gives you an idea of what you can charge. You're then, because you're doing your research, going to find out, well, how much is my roaster charging me per pound? What are your actual cost of goods? And you have to break that down into how much does 2 shots of espresso cost? Not just the cost of the coffee, but broken down over the life of an espresso machine, right? If you have I have a $20,000 La Marzocco Linea. I got a new one since that $500 one, by the way.
I was going to say.
It is custom cherry red. She's beautiful, but I also know, okay, so I have a new $20,000 custom-made La Marzocco. Life expectancy on this machine is 15 to 20 years. I'm building the cost of my espresso into that maintenance. What is the cost of a cup? When you're looking at if it's Cisco or if it's a restaurant supply company, how much does a paper cup cost? Down to the cent. How much does a lid cost? Down to the cent. And then you know how much, if you're going to charge $3 for a latte, well, and then again, milk, that's a varying price these days too. Alternative milks. What's the biggest trend in alternative milks? So knowing your cost of goods down to the penny. And you can estimate these before you even open your doors for customers. And I always say, budget your income low and budget your expenses high. Conservative budgeting is a better model to follow than saying, I'm going to open my doors and 100 people a day are going to come in.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a good problem if you budgeted that low and it came out really high. But a lot of people will say key performance indicators. What are your key performance indicators? 1, know what that means. Those are things that are telling you the health of your business, right? Profit and loss statements. Those are a great one. What are the cost of goods sold compared to the sales that they're bringing in? We joke in restaurant that your margins are negative is the running joke in restaurants these days. But you got to know how can I find ways? And then I choose another key performance indicator. Not everyone chooses it. For me, it's a turnover rate. How often do I turn over staff? And let's face it, we're going to always have turnover. People move. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's not the best fit for someone. And if I know that, it's showing me a consistency to my customer. My customer wants to come in and have a consistent experience. And if I have too much turnover, they're not going to have that. So those are my key performance indicators. Think about what you're going to want as a business owner as your key performance indicators. Most will always say it's your cost of goods to sales, but find the other things that are showing success in your business. The other final thing I'll mention when it comes to profit and loss and how do you turn in operations, waste management, super important. I'm not sure how many of the listeners have done the barista certification class with the Specialty Coffee Association, but they do measure your waste per drink.
Right.
It can't be more than 1 ounce per drink. So I've added that up for my staff. I did a one-on-one cost class with them one night, and we said, all right, if you're wasting 1 ounce per latte, and we're making 500 lattes a day, and a gallon of milk costs this much, and there's 128 ounces in a gallon, how much money are we just literally pouring down the drain at the end of the day? And then I equate that number to how many dollars an hour raise could we afford based off how much milk we're dumping down the drain each month?
Yeah. And so it brings it home for them. How does that materialize in a positive way? So this is how much money we're wasting. Now, let's say we're saving money and we do really great with our waste. I suppose you really have to come through and say, yes, now we're going to give people raises, or we are doing consistent raises in programs and systems that will follow through on that demonstration of here's what we can do if we help eliminate waste.
Oh, you absolutely have to follow through on your financial commitments to your staff. I tell people, don't try to get away with the least amount you could pay your staff. Think about what's the most I can get away with giving my staff, because they are your number one asset. I have a $20,000 espresso machine. My staff is 5 of those. That machine cannot be anything without my staff trained to run it. We do a couple different things. I'm always competitive with the market. Colorado has an open wage law, meaning if you post a job description, you have to post the wages. Well, I am always scouring, and I will always be the highest paying coffee shop because I'm competitive. As I think you should be to go into business, you should have a little competitive edge. No one should just be like, I just went into this and don't care about making money. Wouldn't that be nice? So I'm always checking what are competitive wages, beating it, having to match my cost of goods and sales to be able to afford those. I also do profit sharing. So every quarter, I take the profit. Right now, it's 25% of the profit at the end of each quarter. We don't do the whole percent because I do need to put some money back into maintenance and what I call my oh crap fund, right? The rainy day fund, to be able to make sure that, hey, if COVID hits again, I can afford 6 months of rent.
I was going to say, you can call it the pandemic fund.
The pandemic, yeah, however you want to call it. I needed new doors on my business. That was 10 grand. Didn't know doors were that expensive. Someone flushed a diaper down the toilet. That was $1,200. So part of the profit fund goes to the pandemic fund, as we'll call it, and the maintenance fund. But 25% of it does go to the staff at the end of each quarter. And they know this is coming. And one time I asked them, I said, this is about $2 an hour. Would you all prefer this back on your regular wages? And I was really surprised because they all came back and said, you know what, Erin? No, you pay us competitively enough. I can expect my bills. I can pay my rent and I can pay my credit card. I'm good. I would like to keep this as my quarterly bonus because that's my fun money. For one of my staff members, that was her tattoo fund. For another one of my staff members, this was her new car wheel fund. But I follow through with it. They know the moment I hire them that we have quarterly profit sharing. There's clear and transparent wages, right? So I say, okay, I'm not going to offer a raise until I know I can continually support it. But at 3 months, you get a raise. When you get your food safety manager class, you get a raise. If you complete other classes and certifications that I support and pay for, then you can also get a raise. So those are all clearly lined out in our employee manual because it should never be a guess of how you can earn more in your business.
Okay. Let me ask you about this because for some, doing these types of things is a desperate bid to coax people to stay with them. You know, we've said on the show before similar things about don't pay what you can get away with, pay what you can, and they should know what you can because you're transparent with them. And I like your mentoring aspect of this because that treats them like adults, like they can know what a business is about and be trusted to kind of comprehend that. But there's a difference between applying benefits for the purpose of demonstrating a consistent ethic of caring for people versus when you don't care for them, but you really just don't want the hassle of them leaving. So what are your thoughts on that? Because I do see a lot of that around, and it sounds, like what you're talking about is this is just a consistent ethic for how you want this business to always be a human business. But it could be tempting to just be like, yeah, I'm just going to paste these things onto what I do. And sometimes it doesn't work.
That's a really good point. And I'm actually going to pull up an interesting statistic that I read recently, and it's from the Workforce Institute. And granted, this is from 2021, so slightly outdated data. Now, 36% of workers, according to this survey, leave for better compensation of benefits. The rest of that, right, that 64%, 64% are leaving for non-monetary reasons. They're leaving because they need a better work-life balance. Do you not have flexible enough scheduling? Or do you work them too many hours? Do they not know their schedule 2 weeks in advance? More leave because there's not a lack of recognition at work, right? We joke about gold stars, but I mean it. Find a way to actually recognize when people are doing well. Do it frequently, do it verbally, do it publicly. People leave to find a better work culture. People leave because the company's values don't align with their peers. And people leave because of lack of strong relationship with their peers and leaders. And so again, that's from the archivers, the Workforce Institute. 64% of people leave for non-compensation, non-benefit reasons.
Yeah. What is the saying? People don't leave a job, they leave a manager.
Yeah, people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad bosses.
Yeah, and it is relational because money is a poor substitute for the riches that you could have in meaning and fulfillment. Not that you should have to choose between both necessarily, like you were saying, but you're absolutely correct. And so when we're thinking about things beyond these benefits for employees and the key performance indicators, we're also thinking about the performance of the people on the job and holding people accountable and inspiring them in the midst of the ebb and flow of willpower we all have day in and day out. What kind of things do we need to be thinking about doing for our business so that in the making of beverages and bagel sandwiches and stocking bags on the shelf, there is a steady consistency to it no matter what's happening?
That's when I really talk strongly about standard operating procedures. And I love your show, Chris, because I listened to it. I remember someone once wrote about cultivated chaos, I think it was, where there's a certain level of, yeah, you can do things your own way, but at the end of the day, some things need to look like this. How you get there is your whole own journey. Choose your own adventure, but get to the end at the end and by a certain time frame, right? But having that standard operating procedure of what should this look like at the end. And you know what's funny is one thing I learned along the way was I needed to write out what a clean bathroom looked like at the end of the day. For a while, it just said, clean the bathroom. Well, that had different perspectives of what clean looked like based off of someone's personal experience. And so I did have to list out, it has to look like this at the end of the day. Now, do I care if you do the floors first or the sink first? No. But how you get there and being out by this time and pacing your time. So sometimes even in closing, right? Here's the closing list, but sometimes I'll break out little time spots between this hour and this hour, 30 minutes before closing. These things should already be 90% done. 15 minutes before closing, these things should be 90% done. And then same for mid-shift leaves, right? When the mid-shift person leaves at the middle of the day, they shouldn't just be like leaving in chaos and just a mess for the poor closers. What are those things? What are those standard operating procedures? By everyone knowing them and having that, again, physical checklist. That's why my book has a physical checklist in it. So that way it just helps you know where you're at mentally. Those are all great ways to just keep yourself motivated during the day. Now, I think your question of how do we keep maybe a long-term interest, where's that long-term checklist for barista development, or how am I doing as a job, that check-in? I really encourage people to look at what we call skills-based competencies. If I say you have to have communication skills, and we all say this on a job description, I might want to specify if you need English language face-to-face personal skills versus writing skills versus typing skills. Those are all communication. But if I want specifically someone who can have verbal face-to-face communication skills, which is a key ingredient of being a barista, but I didn't specify that, and someone might come in thinking, I have great communication skills. I can type up an email like no one's business. Those are different type of communications. And so I write out all those skills. They're written in the job description when they're posted. And those are the only things that I hold them accountable when we do evaluations. No one likes to be held to a surprise accountability thing, right? Like if I ask my husband to do something and he's going to do what I asked him to do, but if suddenly I'm just like, well, why didn't you do the dishes too? He's like, well, you didn't ask me to, but I held him to that standard.
Yeah. No, people can't read your minds.
No, you can't read our minds. Absolutely not. Having skills-based competencies helps, one, the employee know what's expected, and two, it eases your process of evaluations later. Are they doing what I've actually asked them to do? Right? This concept of go above and beyond. Why should they go above what we're paying, skill level, what we're paying them to do? If we're seeing them do that, we should compensate them for that. But then that should be listed as the next skill set, right? So you have entry-level skills for an apprentice barista, skills for a barista, skills for a shift lead, skills for your assistant manager. I also like to build in, and I've mentioned this too, your side journey roles. I hate social media management. So when I have a staff member who's on my team who's really into it, I'll be like, hey, I'll pay you an extra per hour to cultivate the images and quotes that we need for our social media pages. I had a girl who was doing her degree in communications at her school. She wanted to learn how to write. So I put her in charge of our blog and I paid her extra for that. So side mission, side adventure roles, but writing them out, having the expectations set.
To go back to the theme of the idea that you're going to follow through, you know, if you're having these skills-based competencies in varying roles, we like to say here that you have to create the position for the business, not the person. And the idea that you're going to have an assistant manager or a barista lead and all of these things, again, maybe in a desperate bid to keep somebody there, but you actually don't need that role, or it's a glorified barista position. And it's just like, now I'm taking inventory, so I have the title of assistant manager or something like that. It seems like, you know, you're going to need to have a lot of forethought into creating these. Why are these skills important for that particular position? And holding people accountable for their performance sometimes can fly in the face of what people would expect relationship-based in work environments to feel like or be like. And there's a bit of a learning curve, especially if somebody's coming into a coffee shop as just a barista to start out. And they maybe have the same kind of misconception as somebody starting a coffee shop. This is going to be a chill job. But then you start talking to them about what they're responsible for, and you have to have a talk with them about the way the bathroom is cleaned or something like that. How is it that we can balance holding people accountable for standards while also building trust relationally as the boss? So it's not this just like harsh contradiction where you're a taskmaster and then you're trying to be a friend and then you're a taskmaster. What's the transcendent practice beyond that kind of duality there?
So a non sequitur, and you'll love this in the book because there's so many non sequiturs about coffee. It's business and then a non sequitur into coffee. My son takes rock climbing class. I know, it's such a Colorado thing. And if they mess up, if they fall off the wall, they have to answer 2 questions before they can get up on the wall. What did I do wrong? And it can't be I'm not strong enough or it's too hard. Those aren't answers that are acceptable. What did I do wrong? And what can I do better next time? So I try to think of when I'm working with my staff, and it's even before they get to their quarterly, and it's when I've trained my leaders to check in on is checking in occasionally and correcting something before it becomes an ingrained habit, right? Correcting cleaning the bathroom properly before suddenly 6 months in, that's just how they clean it. And it's their new habit.
Yeah.
And one thing I always ask in our onboarding process, in addition to some other great questions like, do you have holidays that we should celebrate that aren't nationally recognized? What's your preferred name that you like to go by? Mm-hmm. One of the things I ask is, how do you like to receive feedback? Because everyone likes to receive feedback differently. And again, each human is individual. So by knowing this right out the gate, I can make sure that when it comes time to give corrections, to steer their ship sideways just a little bit more to a way that I would like to be, that I'm doing it in a way that matches their preferred mode of feedback, how they like to receive criticism if it's going to be critical. And then again, asking them, what do you think we did wrong here? How can we improve?
That's good. I mean, it's a collaboration. It's not a dictation. I like that approach a lot. And the word hospitality just comes to mind, of course, is the way that you are preparing yourself and the environment for them is the way that I would prepare for guests in my house, guests in my coffee shop, and in very real ways. Your role, anyone's role in leadership is as a servant leader to create an environment where success is as possible as it can be when it's as far as it is up to you, but also collaborating with them. So that really strikes home.
In my training, I love to remind new staff that we have all done every mistake you are going to do. And if you can come up with a new mistake, I'll give you a gold star, so long as you just don't burn the building down. But keeping that relevancy of we've all done this mistake, we've all been in your shoes, and having that little sense of human progress with it. Again, if someone messes up cleaning the bathroom at the end of the day and I know they know better, I could check in the next day and be like, hey, did you have somewhere you needed to be in a big hurry yesterday? Is everything all right? Checking in, because sometimes those are indicators that things aren't going well and you need to help support that staff member a little bit more.
Yeah, that's good. And you're assuming positive intent from the beginning.
Yes, there's something called the principle of charitable interpretation. Mm-hmm. And it's the idea that no one's actively out there trying to hurt your feelings. If there's 2 ways to interpret something and one of them hurt your feelings, they probably meant the other way.
Yeah, exactly. Let me just say, I feel like so much of what you've shared is just some really good wisdom for people to follow already in their coffee shops, but there's more in the book, of course. And this has been a fantastic conversation. So thank you, Erin, for being on the show. Where can we go to purchase and read this book and learn more about Red Buffalo?
Well, Chris, thank you again so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate this platform and everything that it offers for coffee shop leaders. The book is called The CEO, an Entrepreneur's Checklist to Starting, Running, and Succeeding in Small Business. It is available on Amazon in both paperback and on Kindle. And yes, I am working on an audiobook version because the face for radio is real.
Well, I'm really glad to have you on the show, and we'll obviously link to those in the show notes. But thank you again. This was a great conversation.
I really appreciate it, Chris. Thank you so much.
Okay, everybody. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation, and I love the clarity that Erin brings to all these different situations that you're going to encounter in the journey of owning your own coffee shop. And this book, The CEO, is a chronicle of what she has been through in running and starting and running Red Buffalo Cafe. And I think this is something you should pick up, read, and as you've listened today, you know Erin has a lot to offer. So definitely go and pick up the book on Amazon. You can find the links in the show notes. And you should also look them up on their website, redbuffalocafe.com, and follow on Instagram at Red Buffalo Cafe. And now, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback from me about today's episode, feel free to send me an email. chris@keystotheshop.com is where you can do that. And also, if you want to be added to that preliminary list, like the early application list for key holder coaching groups, these mastermind coaching groups with fellow coffee shop owners who are all dedicated to each other's success, those are launching again, another opportunity in 2024, right around the beginning of the spring. So email chris@keystotheshop.com if you are interested in that. So with that, that's the end of our episode today, everyone. Thank you so much. Now, please do remember to subscribe to the show, share the show, share Keys to the Shop and these episodes. Go ahead and follow on Instagram as well. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.